Lately, I've noticed a trend with the large carriers, particularly the ATA carriers, to want to encourage their lease operators and owner operators, or insist that they work on a percentage of the load pay system. Now, drivers and lease operators should be aware of all the pitfalls of this system, because there are all sorts of ways that they can lose money under the percentage system. Let me give you 5 common examples of when the percentage system can screw you. This video is brought to you by ShipX. Now, you've heard me complain about percentage pay. ShipX is a small carrier, about 370 trucks, and they pay salary to their people. It's a reefer outfit. They pay $62,500 a year. That's $15,000 over the national average. They've got full benefits, a benefit package, and a 401k plan based out of Salt Lake City. Check them out at shipx.com. All big carriers have a few major customers that they cater to. They need to keep these customers, they need to keep them happy. So let's say you work for a big carrier like this that runs percentage trucks, and their main customer gets super busy, and all of a sudden that carrier's got a lot of loads to cover. What he'll do to satisfy that customer and to make sure he's got these loads covered and on trailers and on the move is, if he's running percentage trucks, he'll bring all his percentage trucks back empty to get them back as soon as possible to get these loads on the trailers, to get them moving, to satisfy that big customer. And remember, on percentage, you're running empty for free. And I've known all sorts of carriers that will bring their trucks back hundreds, if not thousands of miles empty just to cater to a major customer. And you think this doesn't happen? Happens all the time. Here's a second example. Say your carrier has a major customer that ships into dead freight areas of the country. These areas are scattered all over the country, areas that it's hard to find backhaul freight out of. But the carrier's got to take the freight. So he sends it on his percentage truck, and then sits the percentage truck, sometimes days at a time, looking for a load to get back out. Or finally he ends up giving up and running the truck empty, hundreds of miles to the nearest backhaul. There's a second example of when the percentage truck is losing time and money. Here's another case in point. The freight rate is down, and that happens. Freight rates move up and down all the time. But the carrier's got to move his percentage trucks because that's how he makes his money. So he takes cheap loads for the percentage trucks and sends them on their way. And if his end of the percentage isn't quite high enough, he maneuvers the percentage just a wee bit to ensure that the carrier makes the money they need to make and takes a little bit off the truck. Happens every day. Or look at this case. A high volume customer is being solicited by another carrier. What does your carrier do to keep the freight? He cuts the rate, of course, just to keep that customer because he needs him. Who loses in that scenario? The carrier still makes his percentage. It's the truck that loses money there. Finally, and here's a beaut right here. The carrier takes a load for backhaul from a load broker. The load broker he takes it from has already taken it from a freight forward, or in effect, another load broker. So the carrier takes it from the second load broker and then passes it through his logistics or brokerage arm, takes a percentage, then passes it on to the transportation arm of the carrier who sells the load to the truck. That load, the rate on that load has been cut 4 times before it gets to the truck. And it's common practice in the trucking industry. That's why they have this big fight going on in Washington right now about broker transparency. That's what started all of this. Because the only people that know the true freight rate on that move are the original shipper and the original broker or freight forwarder. Everybody else has no way of checking to see if they're getting an honest rate on that deal. Now, all these examples were just off the top of my head. I can think of a half a dozen more. Easy as that. I was heart-sickened when I read in Overdrive online this month that 80% of lease owner-operators and owner-operators are now working percentage. Carriers love percentage because they just can't lose. Their money's guaranteed. The only ones in this chain that lose are the truck drivers. Now, I know some of you are sitting there going, "Oh, Dave, My carrier would never do that to me. And I'm here to tell you that you probably still believe in Santa Claus and the Sugar Plum Fairy. Trucking is a dirty business. As an owner-operator or a lease operator, realize that you have absolutely no control over the freight rates. Zero. This is a game when you're rolling percentage, you're rolling the dice. The trucking company cannot lose. Only the truck can lose. Now, for brand new guys getting into being an owner-operator or a lease operator, I strongly recommend that you don't go to work for a carrier that's offering you percentage pay, especially as a new guy. Do you think the new lease operators and the new owner operators are getting the high-paying freight? Of course they're not. The high-paying loads go to senior, well-established owner-operators that have been there for a long time and have a good track record, or they're going to the dispatch favorites. The new guys get to haul the cheap freight, and you'll be doing that for a few years at least until you establish yourself. You're better off on another pay system. For owner-operators and lease operators that are already on a percentage system, all I can tell you is track all your empty miles every month and record them all and match them up against your fuel costs and your truck running and operating costs to see if you're truly making money. Make sure you get photocopies of all your bills of lading and all the rates that you've been paid on these loads for your records. Now, finally, I've got to say something that I always say, and the secret to success in trucking is to work for a good carrier. Now, there are owner-operators out there working for good, honest, established carriers that make a good living running percentage pay. But those guys generally are guys that have been in the industry for years, and they know what they're doing, and they know who the good carriers are. Be aware, once again, at the end of the day, carriers love the percentage system because they can't lose. As an owner-operator or a lease operator, it's a whole lot more simple to check your pay statements if you're running by mileage or by hourly or even by salary than if you're running by percentage. Because with percentage, you have absolutely no way of checking to make sure that you're being honestly paid. And I trust carriers not at all. Let me give you a story about a guy I know that was running percentage, and he was thrilled out of his mind over it. Back here many years ago, here in Northern Ontario where I live, all the road salt comes into my hometown at the port on great big lake freighters, and they unload and pile the salt up, and the trucks haul it all over Northern Ontario for distribution. Now be aware that Northern Ontario is bigger than the state of Texas. I talked to a couple of these guys to see how they were doing making a living, and the one guy I spoke to said he was thrilled because they calculated it all out, and he was making $2 a mile. And this was back in the 80s, and he said he was making $2 a mile running in an area the size of Texas. And I said, that empty and loaded miles? He goes, oh no, just for the loaded miles. So I said, well, what do they pay you coming back empty? Well, he says, oh, nothing, we just come back empty for free. So I said, so you're doing the round trip, when you work it all out, you're working for $1 a mile. No, $2 a mile, he said, $2 a mile. He says, the empty miles don't count. These guys were pulling 4-axle trailers through some pretty rough country and some pretty big hills. The trailers were all aluminum because they had to be to scale the weight, and the salt was eating away at the trailers. And they were all working for $1 a mile. And nobody here could see that. And eventually, all those owner-operators went broke doing that. Just a lesson in keeping up with the math when you're trucking. It's a business. You've got to treat it like a business. Stay safe, keep the rubber side down, keep an eye on your business if you're responsible for the truck. And I'll see you on the back haul.